They say life surprises you when you least expect it. And I can tell you that night in my kitchen, it did more than surprise me. It stirred something I hadn't felt in a long time. Something tender, something quietly electric. Before we dive in, I'm curious, from which cities are you watching us tonight? Let me know down in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Alright, get comfortable. Grab your tea. Because what happened that night after dinner is something I still carry with me. Close, quiet, and unforgettable. The clink of forks and soft murmur voices filled my dining room. The warmth of roasted rosemary chicken and garlic potatoes still lingering in the air. I had just cleared the dessert plates when the last of the guests filtered out with hugs and familiar goodbyes. It had been a lovely Sunday dinner, as it usually was when I had the family over. Except this time Lucas didn't leave with the others. I noticed him leaning on the back of the chair, eyes scanning the floor like he was working something out in his head. He was the kind of man who didn't speak unless he meant it. Kind, thoughtful, but private in a way that always kept people just a little on the outside. I started wiping down the table, keeping it casual. You all right, Han? He looked up slowly, and there was something in his eyes I couldn't quite read. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't joy either. It was loaded, like he'd been carrying something all night and couldn't hold it anymore. Can I stay a little longer? He asked, voice low. Of course, I said, trying to hide my curiosity. You want some tea? He nodded. Yeah, that'd be nice. So I set the kettle on and pulled out the chamomile. The kitchen had grown quiet, that soft kind of stillness that only comes after a full house empties out. My old radio played a slow jazz tune in the corner, the lights above casting a soft yellow glow across the counters. He sat back down at the table, fingers loosely folded, gaze fixed on the steam curling from his mug. I've been meaning to talk to you about something, he finally said. That's when I paused. Something about his tone, gentle, careful, told me this wasn't just a casual conversation. I leaned against the counter, giving him the space to speak. Go ahead, I said quietly. He took a breath, still not looking at me. I've been thinking a lot lately about connection, real connection, and where it comes from, and who we let see us really see us. That stopped me. I didn't say anything right away. Instead, I watched him, the way his jaw tensed and relaxed, the way his thumb traced the rim of his mug. He wasn't asking a simple question. He was unraveling something inside himself. I guess I've just felt a little out of place lately, he said. With people, with life. I don't know. I walked over, sat across from him, folded my hands in my lap. You're not alone in that, Lucas. Believe me. He finally looked at me, and there it was. The full weight of it. Vulnerability. Not the kind that begs for pity, but the kind that whispers for understanding. You've always seemed so grounded, he said. Strong, like nothing shakes you. I gave a small laugh. You think that's strength? It's just layers. I've had 61 years to learn how to carry the cracks without letting them show. His lips curved just slightly. That's what I mean. That right there. I tilted my head, confused. You don't try to fix people. You just let them be. My heart gave a little tug. I hadn't expected him to see me like that. Not really. There was a pause, long but not uncomfortable. Just open. Then he said it. Have you ever felt like you wanted to be seen again? Like really seen? Not as a mother or a host or the strong one, but just Ava. That question. It hit me in the center of my chest. I blinked, unsure what to say at first. I hadn't been asked anything that personal in years, maybe decades. Yes, I whispered, voice thinner than I expected. More times than I can count. We sat in silence after that, but it wasn't empty. It was thick with shared understanding. Lucas leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly, like something inside him had just unclenched. I don't know why I told you all this, he said. I guess I just needed to say it to someone who'd understand. You picked the right someone, I replied. He smiled. Not the quick, polite kind, but something warmer, something grateful. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was playing a role. Host, mother, caretaker. I felt like Ava, just Ava. And that was the beginning of something I didn't see coming. Something quiet, something real. The next morning, the sunlight spilled lazily through the kitchen blinds, casting golden stripes across the counter where the empty mugs from the night before still sat. I hadn't put them away. On purpose, I think, like some small part of me didn't want to erase the feeling that had lingered in the room after Lucas left. He hadn't stayed long after that moment. We didn't say anything too deep after his question. There were no confessions, no sudden embraces, nothing like that. But there had been something shared, something felt, and it sat with me well into the night while I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. All day Monday, I moved through my usual routine, watering the plants, calling Janice from book club, walking to the corner store. But beneath it all, I kept thinking about what he said. Have you ever wanted to be seen again? It kept echoing, catching me off guard at random times. That afternoon around 4, there was a knock on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, there he was again. Lucas, hands in his pockets, eyes soft. I hope it's okay. Stop by, he said. Of course. I smiled, stepping aside. Come in. He looked different in the daylight. Maybe a little nervous, maybe more certain. I couldn't tell. He walked into the kitchen like he'd been there 100 times because he had. But this time he moved slower, not out of caution, but as if noticing things for the first time. I've been thinking about what we talked about last night, he said. Me too, I admitted. We sat again, this time on the porch, sipping cold lemonade as the breeze rustled through the oak leaves above. My neighbor's wind chimes tinkled faintly in the background. It was peaceful, honest. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable, he began. You didn't, I interrupted gently. You made me remember myself. That made him glance at me with that same expression, quiet, almost reverent, like he was searching for something in my face and actually seeing it. He nodded. That's kind of what I've been chasing lately. Something real, something that isn't performance. I sipped my drink, letting the ice clink against the glass. So much of life is performance, isn't it? Even the roles we love. Wife, mother, friend. We put on the smiles, keep the peace, carry the load. But eventually I paused. We forget who we are under it all. He was quiet for a long time after that. Then he leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You ever feel like maybe, just maybe, someone sees you and doesn't need anything from you, just wants to know you? That question pulled something deep in me. It was so simple, so pure. And somehow sitting next to him in that quiet afternoon light, I felt unguarded. No mask, no effort, just present. I reached over, laid my hand over his. He didn't flinch. He didn't make it weird. He just looked down at it, then back at me, eyes full of a tenderness I hadn't seen in years. I don't know what this is, I said, heart pounding a little louder than usual. But it doesn't scare me. Not in the way I thought it might. He swallowed. Me neither. The air between us grew still again. Not empty, just full of possibility. I've been lonely, I admitted. Not the kind of lonely people assume about older women. Not because I don't go out or don't have friends, but lonely in a way that no one's really asked me how I feel in a long time. Lucas's jaw tensed again, like he understood that too deeply. I don't think loneliness has an age, he said. I think it just finds people when they're not looking. We sat for what must have been a full hour, not always talking but not needing to. Eventually, he looked at his watch and said, I should head home. I've got an early meeting tomorrow. I nodded but felt the ache of something unfinished as he stood. He paused at the door, his hand resting on the frame. Would you mind if I came by again soon? My voice was barely more than a whisper. I'd like that. He gave me a look. A look that didn't ask for anything, didn't assume. It was just there, open and honest. And after he left, I stayed in the porch chair for a while, listening to the wind, feeling the warmth of where our hands had met. I was 61 years old and something in me was stirring that I hadn't expected. Not romance, not infatuation, but recognition of myself, of him, of something gently unfolding. The days that followed moved slowly, but not in a dull way. They moved with a kind of quiet anticipation, like the moment just before a storm. Or maybe the calm that comes right after one. I found myself rearranging the house, fluffing pillows that didn't need fluffing, refolding dish towels that were already neat. Not because I was expecting anyone, but because part of me was. Lucas didn't say when he'd come again and I didn't ask, but somehow I knew he would. It was Thursday evening when I saw his car roll slowly up my driveway. I was trimming the dead heads off the hydrangeas by the porch, the shears resting loosely in my hand. When he stepped out of the car, he looked more composed than usual, shirt tucked, jacket slung over his shoulder, but his eyes still carried that same softness that disarmed me every time. Evening, he said, walking up the path. Evening, I replied, feeling the corners of my mouth lift in spite of myself. I hope I'm not interrupting anything. Just the flowers, I smiled. They never seem to know when to stop blooming. He chuckled, then paused at the steps, not assuming to come further. Can I sit with you for a bit? Always. We sat on the porch again, the early summer sky deepening into lavender and gold. Crickets were beginning to stir, and the breeze was warm but playful. I brought out 2 glasses of sweet tea without asking, and we settled into the same rhythm we'd found a few days earlier. But this time something was different. The air had a new weight to it, not heavy but meaningful, like we were teetering on the edge of something unspoken. Lucas leaned back, ankle over knee, gazing at the neighborhood like he was seeing it for the first time. I had a long talk with my sister today, he said. Oh. She asked me if I was okay, if I was happy. He paused, then looked at me with those eyes again, the ones that didn't demand answers but left space for them. And what did you say? I told her the truth, he said slowly. I told her I wasn't sure. That honesty hung in the air like the scent of garden roses. I think we spend so much of our lives pretending we're content, I said, just to make the people around us feel like they don't need to worry. He nodded. Exactly. And somewhere in the pretending we start to forget how to want more. That struck me deep. Wanting more. At my age, people often assume you're done wanting, that your story's already been told. But sitting there with Lucas beside me and the sky darkening over the trees, I knew that wasn't true. I'm glad you're here, I said, my voice quieter than I expected. He turned toward me closer now. Not in a rush, not pushing, just there. I haven't stopped thinking about our last talk, he said. It's been sitting with me, the way you said you wanted to be seen again. My breath caught a little. It wasn't shame. It was recognition. That same hum in my chest when someone brushes against a part of you thought was long gone. I wasn't sure if I should have said that. I admit it. Felt too open. It wasn't too much, he said. It was the first real thing I'd heard in a long time. I looked at him, then really looked at the faint crease between his brows, at the way his hands rested calmly in his lap, steady but not tense. This wasn't a boy looking for attention. This was a man who carried his thoughts like stones, carefully, deliberately. He reached for his glass, took a sip, then set it down with a soft clink. Do you ever think about what it would be like to just sit with someone? No expectations, no titles, and just exist together as 2 people? I swallowed more often than I let on. I feel that with you, he said. I don't have to impress you. I don't have to explain who I am. My heart warmed, but not in a way that was loud or needy. It was steady, calm like an ember. Not fire, but heat. I think that's rare, I whispered. He nodded. It is. We fell into silence again, but it was richer than before. Like words would have only cheapened it. After a while, I stood and stepped just inside the door. Let me light a candle, I said. The porch feels like it's asking for one tonight. When I returned, I placed a small glass candle on the table between us. The flame flickered gently, casting soft shadows on our faces. He watched me move, then said, You're graceful. You know that. I laughed softly. Graceful. 61, I think you need your eyes checked. He shook his head with a small smile. It's not about age. It's how you carry yourself. Like you know something the rest of us forgot. That caught me off guard. I don't know if I ever knew it, I replied. But I'm starting to remember. He reached across the candle, gently brushing his fingertips over the back of my hand just for a moment. Not to start something, but to say, I see you. It was the most respectful, grounding touch I'd felt in years. We didn't kiss. We didn't make promises. That wasn't what this was. It was deeper, simpler. When he stood to leave, the night fully settled around us, he looked down at me and said, Thank you for letting me be here. For letting me be. Just me. You always can, I said. And when he left, I sat with that candle still flickering. The warmth of his words wrapped around me like a shawl. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for life to find me. I felt like I had just stepped back into it. The next few days felt like moving through water, slow, gentle, deliberate. I wasn't rushing toward anything. I wasn't running from anything either. I just let myself be. And for a woman like me, Ava, 61 years old, with more tucked away memories than I care to count, that kind of peace doesn't come easily. But it did that week. I found myself humming while I swept the kitchen, laughing to myself when I overcooked the toast. I'd catch my reflection in the mirror and pause. Not to fix anything but just to look to see myself. Lucas didn't come that week. He didn't text, didn't call. And strangely, that didn't upset me. Not like it might have in the past, because what we shared, it didn't ask for rules or definitions. Simply was. But on Sunday afternoon, just as I was finishing folding the last of the laundry, I heard the soft knock at the door. I didn't even have to ask. I knew. There he was again, standing on my porch, hair tousled by the wind, eyes looking straight into mine like no time had passed. He said simply. I replied, stepping aside. Come in. We sat in the living room this time, side by side on the old floral couch that had seen far too many family holidays, and not enough moments like this. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped loosely. I've been thinking, he said, about the kind of relationships that never get talked about. I watched him quietly, the kind, he continued, that aren't built on labels or timelines, but on truth, on presence, on being seen and seeing someone in return. I nodded, heart calm but aware, fully present. I've never had that, he said. Not really. I've had partners, girlfriends, but it was always surface or fast or expected. And with me, I asked gently. He looked at me, not with hesitation but with clarity. With you, I feel quiet inside, like I don't have to keep performing. I placed my hand on his knee, not in a forward way, not even in a romantic way, just in a knowing way. A connection without pressure. That's how I feel too, I said. And it's been a long time since I felt that. He smiled, soft and honest. You make me feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. We sat in that moment, letting it wrap around us like sunlight through a window pane. Then I asked something I've been holding on to for a while. Are you scared of what people might say? He considered it. He admitted, but not anymore. Because they don't see what I see. They don't feel what we feel. And frankly, most people are too busy running from their own silence to understand what it's like to sit in someone else's. I let out a soft breath. That was the truth. We talked for hours that evening. Not about us exactly, but about life, family, fear. The tiny decisions that shape our lives, the quiet aches we bury under routine. And somewhere between the laughter and the long pauses, I realized this wasn't about starting a new chapter or redefining my life. It was about honoring it. It was about recognizing that even now, especially now, I was still allowed to feel alive, to connect, to be curious. When the sky had turned navy blue and the first stars began to wink through the trees, Lucas reached for my hand again. Not with urgency but with care. You've given me something I didn't know I needed, he said. And I don't want to walk away from it. I don't want you to, I said. And just like that, nothing and everything changed. We didn't speak in declarations. We didn't draft a plan for what comes next. We just sat there hand in hand, the night folding around us like a soft blanket. Two people, two quiet souls. No labels, no promises, just a connection so deep and unexpected that it didn't need explaining. I'm Ava, 61 years old. And I've learned that sometimes life doesn't arrive with fireworks or grand entrances. Sometimes it stays behind after dinner, lingers in a conversation and simply asks, do you want to be seen? And when you say yes, when you truly say yes, you start living all over.